afternoon. We will be speaking in English because that's the language both of our guests speak very well. Welcome to this panel discussion about feminism and emancipation in the Netherlands and in Germany. I am Marja Verburg. I'm from the Duitsland Institute Amsterdam. And we discuss our subject with two feminists and activists, one from Germany, Jasna Strick, and one from the Netherlands, Harriet Bergman. I'll keep it short because we have not much time. We're in a tight schedule. But Jasna Strick is a writer and an activist and a feminist from Berlin. And she was one of the initiators in 2013 of the action Aufschrei. I don't know whether you know about it or not, but it's a hashtag like me too, but only 5 years earlier. Or 4 years, I should say, with whose victims of sexual harassment or sexual assault shared their experiences. And it led to a debate in Germany about sexism and sexual harassment long before Me Too did. And but she's part of other activist movements as well, but she will tell about that herself in a few minutes. And then we have Harriet Bergman, also an activist and a feminist from the Netherlands, and she's a philosopher as well. She's involved in other protest movements like Foto against the fossil fuel industry. And in January, if I understood correctly, you'll start a PhD at the University of Amsterdam on political emotions. And as a philosopher, she teaches as well at the University of Amsterdam, which is the reason why she has to leave at 5:23, so we can't make it longer than that. But she will be back afterwards, and we can talk to her then as well at the ball. For this panel, we start with introductions of both Jasna and Harriet. After that, we'll discuss different subjects together here in front of you, and then after that, we particularly want to discuss with you, the audience, as well. And you can do it in English, or ask your questions or your comments, or in Dutch or in German, whatever you feel fine, and we'll try to translate if necessary at all. So first I'd like to ask Jasna to talk to you.
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. As you already heard, I'm a feminist author and activist from Germany, and you also heard the term Aufschrei right now. And I want to bring you back to the year 2013, where we started it. Aufschrei is, I'm too low for this. Aufschrei is outcry in English. If you didn't know. In January 2013, there was a special atmosphere in my internet bubble. In December 2012, an Indian woman died after mass rape. The new year started with newspaper articles about sexism in political parties and, about one person especially. People wrote a lot of blog posts about catcalling, about street harassment, about sexism at work and other topics. Some groups were in the middle of planning the first 1 Billion Rising event, which is this dance event, what took place in different European and other cities. Or some people were criticizing the whole thing, the whole event, like I did. And in January, in the night from 24th to 25th, Nicole von Horst started to write about sexism and sexual violence she experienced in her life. Her first tweet was, I tried to translate, the doctor who touched my butt after in the hospital where I was after I tried to commit suicide. This was the first of some tweets she wrote like in a similar style, and people started to react on her stories, and people added their own stories, and I was the first one who did this, and I was also the one who immediately started to start a meta conversation about what to do with these tweets, with these stories, if there's like a hashtag or a special account or whatever. And at this point, the third person joined, Anne Witzorek, and she suggested to use the hashtag Aufschrei, and this was the start. The hashtag was used 68,000 times in the first 2 weeks, but it was used much longer. But it's hard to find out on Twitter, like the real numbers. Aufschrei was started in the middle of the night, but the next day there were the first contact requests of journalists. Aufschrei was all over the media for the next weeks, for the next months, and for the whole year. We won a prize in summer. 2 books have been written since then. For Germany, Aufschrei was the first time media took serious what people discuss in social media and reported about this. But most important, thousands of people joined the conversation about sexual violence and sexism. Aufschrei was discussed not only on Twitter and online, but also in families, in schools, in universities, at workplaces, at hotel bars, whatever. Advice centers counted 10% more people looking for help after sexual violence than they did before in the year 2013. So this is like a real impact. 2013 was the year of Aufschrei, and for me personally, the year where I started to speak about feminist topics in public. And for all the people who played a role in Aufschrei, 2013 also was the year in which the hate speech intensifies. We all knew anti-feminist comments and threats before because we all blogged about feminism or wrote something somewhere in the internet. But Aufschrei and, of course, the attention made it worse for us, and it never stopped until now. I get insults and rape threats and on every possible channel. Some are anonymous, some are not, but a lot of them have to be taken serious, so maybe this is also a topic for the discussion later. But now I want to, jump 3 years further. I don't know if you heard about this in the Netherlands, but during New Year's Eve celebrations in different German cities, especially Cologne, from 2015 to 16, according to the police, 100,000 women were sexually assaulted. This was the first number we heard. 1,200. But the numbers are not so clear because this made headlines in the early January 2016, but nobody knew anything at this time, and it's not like real ended until now. Police was still investigating in the first days of January 2016, but for a lot of people, the case was already clear. Thousands of refugees from Northern Africa and Arabia must be the offenders, of course. Media was full of racist headlines, gossip, insecure stories. The whole thing still isn't clarified completely now. But after the first days, all the rumors started. And I wanted to take a closer look on one of the people who spoke out against the sexual violence after the New Year's Eve. I don't know if you heard about Bridget Keller, a so-called conservative journalist. After Aufschrei, she wrote, or she said that women should stop crying about sexual violence. Because, she wrote that most of the cases are made up or that they are the women's fault. Her slogan was "Button your shirt," what basically means don't behave like a slut and no one will rape you. But after the New Year's Eve in 2016, she was one of the first who wanted to have more feminist outrage about sexual violence. Conservatives and right-wing people like her used the happenings in Cologne and the other cities for their racist agenda against refugees. And this was not the first try to make up the story that only immigrants bring sexual violence to Germany and also other countries in Europe. They never speak about topics when white men are involved, what's mainly the case in Germany. And so a group of feminists and anti-racist activists who knew each other from other projects came together and wanted to add their perspective to the discussion, and I was one of these activists. None of these right-wing people has ever been interested in feminist topics before, except they could make fun of things like Aufschrei, like Bridget Keller did, or use it for their own agenda. And we were really angry about this, and so we wrote Ausnahmslos, our manifesto against sexual violence and racism, always, anywhere, no excuses, which is what Ausnahmslos means. There are more than 7,000 reported rapes and sexual assaults in Germany every year, and we want to stop all of them, not only the ones from this one night. We worked on a lot of different political and social demands, and published them online within 3 days, what was really hard work to work together with 20-something people. We never wanted to collect signatures or something, but right after we published Ausnahmslos, people wanted to support us. So we made Ausnahmslos a petition and collected 11,000 supporters in the first week. We closed it after the first week because we were not able to handle all the stuff. Ausnahmslos made it to the news all over Germany, also because we were known of other projects before, and we learned a lot about how to work together with the press. So Aufschrei was never planned, Ausnahmslos was. With Ausnahmslos, we added an important voice to the whole discussion and made clear that we stand for intersectional feminism, especially in times like ours, when right-wing groups gain more and more support all over Europe, not only in Germany. We need to move together, and we need to watch out for exploitation of our demands through right-wing politics. We can't afford to divide our powers, and feminism needs to be intersectional and take care of various oppressions, and so Ausnahmslos was one part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the problem you get when you speak out about things. So I think that's something clearly Jasna already gave some impression of what happens when you speak up about stuff. But I wanted to show both, or wanted to tell my own experiences as an activist and as an academic, both when you speak up in what I would call threatening environments, or environments where you could expect some sort of reaction, but also activist environments, because of course within activism there's also a gender problem very often. But I would like to start with how I became a feminist, or when I first started to speak out, and that was as a student in philosophy, because philosophy is a very male-dominated environment. So in 2014 there were 7 female professors and 65 male professors in the Netherlands. And maybe the statistics are a bit different now. Maybe we now have 7 female professors, but to get you an idea, it was quite difficult in the beginning as a student to start a research master with only 2 other women and 35 men. So it sometimes felt like a rugby team of white, strong men smiling, but being able to tackle you whenever you make a wrong move. So that was the sort of the start of speaking out and finding out what this sort of feminist killjoy inside is. So the feminist killjoy is someone who, whenever there's a happy meeting of people liking each other and having a great discussion and everybody having a good time, who then says something that totally disturbs the peace at the dinner table or at the rugby team, the philosophy class, the climate movement, or wherever you speak out, and sort of brings the problem to the table and then is identified as the problem rather than as speaking out about the problem. So first I could practice in a small classroom with a lot of white men, and later I could practice that in a bit larger context at the university policy level. So as an activist, I was involved in the student occupations of 2015, where we not only addressed all the very obvious things like why doesn't university get more money to spend on their education, but also on things like why don't we decolonize the university? What's happening with our diversity policies? Why do we always see women and people of color on the propaganda material, but never in front of the classroom? So there we, killed some joy in the University of Amsterdam atmosphere as well. And of course, I didn't only do that on the barricades or in large demonstrations. But also in a smaller context. So this is a picture of one of the feminist alcoholic open mic nights, which is a very safe environment to kill joy or to talk about whatever troubles you. So we organized poetry nights or open mic nights where people, whoever wanted, could speak about whatever they want and drink. And we explicitly also had lots of apple juice and water and non-alcoholic beverages, but to create an environment where it's actually, more easy to speak about those things. And we had a lot of them, and it was quite fun. But we realized it was very ableist to only have this name, because of course as a strong white woman with a lot of kilos, it's easy to drink a lot, and not everybody has this privileged background or enough body weight to digest all that. But I also did other things as a feminist. So this is a picture of me peeing in front of the Leidseplein. It's not very clear because I couldn't find one, and I thought it might not be so nice to show my pee here. You're welcome. But last year there was a male judge who ruled that a woman had to pay a fine for wild peeing, so peeing in public, and he explicitly said, yeah, women never do this, so there is no problem. And I think that's very good to keep in mind. So if you never make a problem, nobody considers it your problem that you keep your legs together and run home as fast as possible to pee there. So if you make trouble, only then people start to notice that you had a problem all along. I also wanted to show this. I was not involved in this, but this is something that clearly relates to Jasna's story. So a lot of friends of mine protested Wilders, a right-wing politician in the Netherlands who did the same as the crazy right-wing people in Germany, namely use a feminist jargon to spread their racist propaganda. And luckily a lot of people stood up against that and said, well, as feminists, we do not accept this, and we will protest this. And of course, freedom of speech is often for right-wing people like Jordan Peterson or Geert Wilders, but not for the people who speak out against that. So they spent a few nights in jail for bringing these banners and stating that, it's not feminist to hate Muslims. And then the last thing, so these are a lot of contexts where you can speak out about all kinds of gender-related issues. But I think also in the activist world, we sometimes have a gender problem, especially with direct action, which is still seen by some people as a very, male sort of endeavor, while at the current moment where we're in, direct action should be something for everyone. And that's why I wanted to show this. This is Code Rood. I think Josta will tell more about it in a later panel discussion as well. But it's a group of climate activists who explicitly have climate justice on their program than just being concerned with global warming, and who try to practice this sort of perspective also in their organizing. So that was just a brief introduction of some of the things I do and some of the things I think would be good to talk about. So that was it.
Thank you very much. Can you please invite Bridget to discuss some of the subjects you already touched? Is there something you want to react to immediately now, or shall I just open it?
Just open it.
Well, one of the things you said was you used to, I think, the word intersectional, so that, and actually it's one of the things you say as well, so that feminists could work or should work with other groups. Like I think in Germany there's a quota for women in boards of control in big companies. But you could do that together, plead that together, not only for women, but for persons with migration background. I don't know what's the right English word for that, but so should feminists work together with other groups, and how could they do that, or does it already happen?
I think it's not able to not do it, because women are also involved in other discrimination or not.
Yeah, but this quota is especially for women.
Yeah, that's right. But it's also clear that it's harder to get a job as a woman, but it's even harder if you're a black woman. So this is a thing you can't just oversee. So you must talk about this. It's not possible to not do it, I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't lead to political action. I mean, there's a quota for women, but not for so.
Well, I think it would be first good to, how you stated the question was in a sort of way, like as an intersectional feminist, like as women, you should also work together with other groups. Whereas I think that intersectional feminism is the realization that it's not women plus other groups, but that indeed it's black women, it's lesbian women, it's trans people of color, so also that it's already that the people fighting for a female quota are already also black women, that black people fighting for, I don't know, stopping police harassment are also already women. So I sort of feel that intersectional feminism is not the clearest term to explain policy debates, but is more the sort of the lens through which you can describe the world that actually makes sense. Would you agree?
Yeah.
But how can you make it possible that there will be a quota for like more different groups or
Yeah, like in the most cases, speak about it. Just bring it, bring the topic to the debate. Just speak about it.
Killjoy.
Killjoy. A lot of discussions. Also, killjoy your feminist groups when you try to do something and you see that you forget some aspects about maybe racism, maybe disability or whatever.
Yeah, because after Ausnahmslos, it did change the debate in Germany as well. Can you or you already told something about it?
We had the impression that it was a voice that we were the first who spoke about it, but we were not the first ones who thought this.
No.
And because there were so many people who were like, this is exactly the point I thought about the whole last week, because we were pretty early in the discussion. So it was like a thing that had to happen, kind of, and someone had to write it down. And we try to not only be the killjoys, what I like to be, but also be the ones who are like, so and these are the things we want to have, and these are our solutions or our things we want to add to the debate, and not only say like you're not right and you're not talking about the right things, but these are the stuff we need, like more money for already existing groups, better what's the word in English?
What's the word in German?
Ausbildung. Education. Better education for like police officers or people working in the justice system.
And does this happen?
Kind of yes, kind of no. I know that there were some groups who were, there are always like people in these groups who were like, okay, that's a good idea, let's do it. But it's not like there's a new law or something. But I knew that there were police officers groups or other groups who were like, okay, let's do new education, or let's have a workshop or whatever, and let's add our perspective to this, and let's learn about this.
Is there the same discussion going on in the Netherlands you can elaborate on, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay. One of the things you both mentioned actually is that you have the risk of your cause to be hijacked by other groups that then use that for their own cause. Can you both experienced it? Can you do or points of view?
Yeah, I think it's so with racism and feminism, it's very clearly how it happens, and it's also very obvious for me, at least, but also for a lot of people around me, that you should take care of that and be aware of what's happening, and not let your cause or your struggle be used in a certain kind of way. However, I see in different contexts that it's sometimes not that easy. For example, with climate activism, I see that it's sometimes very easy to talk about the future of our kids or the next generation that we have to save. Whereas that, I think, is very much a perspective that leaves out a lot of the things already happening and is very incomplete, and also very much focused only on a sort of Western world of a lot of privileged rich people, whereas there's already stuff happening. And I feel that working together with these kinds of future generation, we have to save them people, it can very much dilute your analysis and your message, but also the political power you have if you would actually work together with the people already affected. And if you would say, well, we're not just in this as white people living in Amsterdam, but also in this as people in other countries who are already facing climate destruction.
Yeah. What's your experience with how to prevent other people you already mentioned, like right-wing populists using Aufschrei and Auslandshund as well?
I think the answer to not let this happen is to have intersectional groups, because when you have people from different backgrounds, they realize if someone is using your struggle, your action, your idea for their own ideas. So if you have a group of people with a diverse background, and like we had Muslim women or whatever, Jewish women, then it's not possible for the right-wing politicians to use your idea because they don't want to be with this group.
Yeah.
So that's also a good thing to not let them overrule your movement.
Is it because when you started Aufschrei in 2013, I think the AfD was already, but it wasn't a right-wing populist party back then, and Pegida didn't exist.
Yeah.
So in the last few years in Germany, a lot of things happened that moved more to conservatism and conservative idea about women, and to right-wing ideas as well. Do you notice that it changed the debate on feminism, or backwarded it?
That's a really difficult question. When Aufschrei happened, we had not the problem with AfD politicians try to be part of our movement. We had only the problem with anti-feminist people talking about what they're always talking about when women are complaining about sexism and sexual violence, that the cases are not real, that we made them up, that we were paid to write all the stories and all that stuff, and of course it's your own fault and all these. So this was the main discussion.
Yeah.
At that time, and now it changed a little bit because as I told us, the New Year's Eve thing was not the first try to use sexual violence from the from the right wing side, whatever. It's a thing they always try, and not only in Germany.
But they're strong and have more voices and more ways to.
Yeah.
Do you notice that in the discussions?
It's like we have to protect the white women in Europe and Germany. Nobody thinks about the children, all this stuff. It's like the same as
it's the same
in the environments then.
Because I have the feeling that, especially in the Netherlands after Me Too, the image of feminism changed, and much more people are aware of problems feminism of women have, and not only about sexual assault, but the discussion about wage equality came up as well. Mm-hmm. So you could say that would be from a women's perspective, a positive change. But then again, this right-wing movement. So how do you see that in the Netherlands?
How I see
because this right-wing thing is going on longer in the Netherlands than in Germany. Or
so I don't really understand the question.
Okay.
So after Me Too, how
the image of feminism has changed actually in two ways, I would say, but I don't know. That's actually my question: whether it changed or not, or whether you noticed it.
Well, I noticed the change, but I'm not sure if I think it already started before Me Too, and I think it has to do with a lot of. I think it has become more fashionable to be a feminist.
Yeah.
Thanks to Beyonce and Taylor Swift and all kinds of.
Okay, yeah.
But I also think that that this sort of commercial feminism, I think it's really good that it's there. But I hope it opens the gate for a more radical analysis of what should happen, so that.
And does it, in your opinion?
Well, I think that if it's more acceptable to call yourself a feminist, which I think by now it is, it will also be more acceptable to say you're a radical feminist, or that you're an intersectional feminist, or maybe that you're an anti-capitalist. I think it sort of opens the gate to start thinking about what we consider as normal.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I see it changed. But I'm not sure how right-wing reactions to Me Too.
Not especially to Me Too, but I think in Germany this is a discussion that will.
It was at the special time. It was this one aspect, and it always tries to come up again since then. Every time there is a case of someone is raped when the person who did it had or could have like an immigration background, then the case is like more not popular but famous. Yeah, like people are speaking about it.
Yeah, I think it's really good to be aware of the sort of history of white women saying to be raped or that being used as a weapon against people of color. Yeah. So that I think
which was happened with
which happened there,
after
but
Cologne.
Also with Me Too, I think it's important to keep in mind the sort of difference between people speaking out about rich, powerful men who clearly did something wrong. The believe the victim sort of narrative there, I think, makes a lot of sense. But to be aware of how this sort of protecting white women thing played out in the past and how that still sort of subconsciously influences what we see as a threat. And
and that it's also easier for women to go to the police when the person who did it is black or has whatever background, because you have already internalized the racism and what you said. So that's also the problem with the high numbers. And the problem with the high numbers is also that the police and the press and all of them mix up everything. Different cities, the number of women who went to the police with the number of cases that happened, with the number of persons who were maybe violent or not. So it's all like, don't trust these numbers about this event.
Which makes the debate more difficult.
Yeah.
I want to go to the audience in just one sec, because perhaps it's not a question we can answer very, very quickly, but I wanted to ask it anyway. We have, of course, a lot of things changed after Me Too. What's the biggest thing you think feminism needs now, or what is the debate? Where has the debate go to in this?
I think we should change from holding individual people accountable, so individual men who are perpetrators of things or who are discriminatory or whatever, to having some sort of system change and policy change, because I think it's very often that we sort of consider individual men to be monsters, rather than say that it's a system of patriarchy and policies and all kinds of rules in place that allow them to be that way and to get away with it often. So I think we should go down
Do you have
policy.
the feeling that this discussion is on its way, or is
Yeah, I do.
And what do you say about?
Basically the same thing. I think we need next debate about masculinity, about how masculinity is linked to violence. Why is it that way? Why are men not able to work with their feelings other way than violent? Or why is that the most accepted way? Because if you look at the people who are like sexual predators, it has always to do something with someone. I'm already losing the word. With power.
Yeah.
Such an easy word. It always has something to do with power, because sometimes there are people who have an issue with power in their own life, maybe lost their job or are in the middle of a divorce or whatever, and so all these things. Men don't talk about how to handle this, and then things happen like violent stuff.
So a debate about masculinity would be good.
I think that's the thing we need, and also a debate about consent, about how we want to live together, about how we want to form relationships. What is a rape? When does it start?
Yeah.
How do I realize that I do something wrong?
Yeah.
Most of the people already know, but I think we have to talk about that. I think these are the things. But if we want to talk about feminism in general, there are of course also other topics than sexual violence. So.
Yeah, I see that we have very little time because we started later. Is there somebody who wants to ask a question to both Jasna or Harriet or one of them? I don't know. Oh, here in front of the. We have to use the microphone because there's a podcast going.
Okay. Well, this issue about re-educating men is the thing that I'm a bit older. That we did in the 70s. and men had their talking groups and were discussing it. And I think something changed with men, not with all of them, but there has been a change. Don't you agree?
I wasn't there in the 70s.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But you don't see it now, or you?
No, I do think it makes a difference, but I think a lot of men were not in talking groups in the 70s, and a lot of men were born in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So
especially the men we are having maybe
Encountering,
yeah, they're not from the
with.
70s. Like
Yeah, they're younger, and it's the same with the thing. I think every generation has to have their own debate about sexism and sexual violence in different things, because that's also topics that have been spoken about in the 70s, but
So
new
we have
people
to
came after that
debate it again and again after
Yeah.
10, 15 years
Yeah.
all over again.
in different contexts, in different medias, whatever, to reach as many people as possible.
Someone else who wants to ask? I can't see it because of the light. Oh, I can see you.
Sorry,
U mag het ook in het Nederlands doen als
Ja,
je dat
ja.
liever heeft.
hoe voorkom je dat als je het debat weer breder gaat maken, dat mannen gaan zeggen, ja, ik ben het ermee eens, ik doe zoiets niet.
How do you prevent, if you make the debate broader, that men say, I agree with the cause, but I don't do it myself. So I'm not the one making the problem. How do you prevent that?
I think I don't have to prevent it. I think men has to discuss with each other, and there have to be other men to teach them and to, like, the thing is, when you just need words like rape or sexism or whatever, there are people like, no, I don't have something to do with that. But
Yeah.
if you go more into detail, if you're like, have you ever touched someone without asking? Have you ever kissed someone without asking? Have you ever stood in front of a house of someone you really liked and watched whether the lights are on or not?
I've
Then
done
there
that.
are people, then there are people like, yeah, okay, maybe I did it. And then it's also the other way around. There are women who are like, sexism is not a thing for me. But if you explain like the whole situation, what could happen and what is part of it, then you're like, okay, yeah, I know these things. This is stuff that happened to me.
Yeah.
So you just don't have to be like on the real theoretical level, but go into the details, and then it's pretty clear.
We have to finish up, but I want to give you a last word as well, if you want to.
Yeah, I think the men who are on the feminist side and don't do anything wrong are the perfect candidates to educate all the other ones and to speak out and do all the work that else falls on the shoulders of the women. So whenever there's a man who is with a clear conscience who wants to contribute to feminism, then I would say, please educate all your fellow people.
Well, my own experience is that after Me Too, a lot of discussions with men as well, and you saw it on the internet as well, that men say, hey, I didn't know, and now I think of it, I've done it as well, and so that will be perhaps a start of changing things. We have to finish. I really would go on with you, but the next session is starting in 5 minutes with Krijnen, who's speaking to Christophe Boegwald and Dunja Verwij. I guess they're already here, but I can't see very much because of the light. Thank you very much for your being here. If you want to, we can discuss more afterwards in the bar. And thank you very much for being here.